Hello, World Wide Web. Welcome back to the Hangin With Web Show. I'm GW Pomichter, and we are at Indie Bookfest 2019 in Orlando, Florida. Hit subscribe for us, because we have got authors from Indie Bookfest basically for the last 2 days, which is like 4 weeks for you on the internet, because we drop one interview a day. So you guys have plenty of content to choose from. We are here hanging with author Melissa Lummis.
You got it.
All right, the author of, most recently, Enlightened.
Enlightened. You got it.
All right. And I know that's probably spelled ish.
It's spelled right.
And yeah.
Enlightened.
It's like reading from we had Cosplay Michael make the cards today. As far as you guys know, I'm telling the truth. But so we're here at IBF. We're hanging out with Melissa Lummis. Melissa, thank you for coming and hanging out with us a little bit.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start there. She put that on the card, so it must be important.
Okay, with Enlightened?
With Enlightened. Let's start with Enlightened.
Okay.
Give us the book blurb.
Give us the book what?
The blurb. The elevator pitch. Give us kind of the...
I'm always so
let's
bad
tell
at
them
these.
what Enlightened is.
Enlightened is a new age suspense, kind of paranormal fantasy.
Wait, new age suspense, kind of paranormal fantasy.
Yes.
That's a lot of stuff going on. You got a lot of stuff going on in there.
Well, if I say paranormal romance, it's not really all about romance. It limits it. But it's new age suspense is something a friend of mine came up with, and she said, you basically write new age suspense. It's
like
metaphysical, it's fantasy, but it's modern mystical.
Modern mystic. She's better at making up words than you are. Just saying.
I'm the writer.
Yeah, modern mystic. I like that. Okay, so give us kind of some story points here. Where are people starting in Enlightened? What is the story? What are they watching? What are they following?
They're starting with the main character who's had the worst 2 years of her life. She's not sure she's really sane anymore after everything that's gone on. But that could describe all of us.
That's where she started.
That's where we're starting.
Wow.
That's her new normal, unfortunately.
Wow.
And it's about to get really shaken up with some...
That's going to get shaken up.
Yes, that's
going to get worse.
It's going to get worse before it gets better, but it does get better.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you the same thing your mom did when you started writing. Why? No. No. How long have you been writing professionally, and how long have you been publishing?
Since 2012. I've been writing my whole life. Professionally, my previous life, I was a technical writer. So at least I was channeling my ability in some way.
Somehow.
But that left me wanting. I always had stories. I was working on them. I finally finished my first novel, and that one's buried in my backyard under, lead and...
Like, please don't read this
ever.
Yeah,
please don't read this ever. That was like the first thing I ever finished. But there's something that happens to you when you write that first book and you go, oh, I can do this. I don't know how very well yet, but I can do it. So the next iteration was Enlightened, actually.
Okay.
But not the one that's being released on August 15th.
Not that one.
No.
Another one.
This one that's being released on August 15th is a probably 7th generation iteration of that one I wrote back in 2012.
Okay. All right.
Because I knew I had the story and I didn't want to lose it, so I wrote it down, but it wasn't quite right. So what's coming out is finally what I think is the story.
Which George Lucas had actually reminded us, art is never finished, it's abandoned.
Yes,
and
exactly.
So, that first time, it wasn't finished, it wasn't quite, you didn't have it, you weren't ready to let it go on its worldly journey.
Right.
Now this is it.
This is it.
Get out of the house, kid. You can't stay in the basement anymore.
Exactly. And there's also that saying that it, like sculpting, you can only do so many passes before you have nothing left to work with anymore, right? Yeah. So I had to put it aside, let it alone, let it simmer on the back burner, do some other writing, which I have another series called The Little Flame. Okay. And that's urban fantasy, just action adventure, urban fantasy. If you're into electronic dance music and that whole scene, it's very much inspired by that DJ scene. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You're just all over the place.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Modern mystical to inspired by the kind of the dance.
Yes, but it's still urban fantasy. It's still magical.
Okay.
Like my tagline is "Get lost in the magic."
Very nice.
So.
Very nice. What draws you to that particular type of storytelling?
I love fantasy. I'm a big old J.R. Tolkien fan, and I always loved urban fantasy. I love anything magical. I love expanding out of our known universe and playing with ideas. I love quantum physics because that makes anything possible.
Yes, and I will go on the record here as saying that she's not wrong. Quantum physics to most of us is magic, because we just can't comprehend. We can't wrap our brains around.
I cannot wrap my puny brain around what people are doing with that concept, but
Yes.
I'm fascinated with it.
It is because things that are so we have a love innate in our souls of the mystical, of the magical, of the
Yes.
things, just whether they are by definition magical is maybe debatable, but it is to us, because when it's mysterious and we don't quite comprehend it as a collective,
Right.
it draws us in.
Right.
I mean, we've been fascinated with this as long as we could tell stories.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. For all I know, Merlin had a Star Trek communicator,
Exactly.
but he was magic to us because we didn't have that. We didn't
Right.
know about that.
Who said that if technology can be so far
Arthur
advanced?
C. Clarke.
Thank you.
Arthur C. Clarke. Any technology advanced enough to be misunderstood can be construed as magic.
Magic. Exactly.
And it is, and there's a magical element to the human being that just gravitates toward that.
Right.
And says, "Hey, I want to know more."
Yes.
Just don't take away the mystery. I like
We
that
love
part.
the
Yes, we
mystery.
do. And so, and you just like telling those kinds of stories.
I do. I enjoy it. I love delving into what people are capable on a personal level in their personality, because we are so much more capable than what we think we are. And the only way you discover the depth of your well is to plumb it. You have to go into that deep, dark hole that you don't want to go into and face it.
That which is why writers exist, because most people are terrified when you walk up and you ask them the question, "Well, what if?" And most people go, "Oh no, I don't want to know." But the writer doesn't. The writer's like, "Hey."
Yeah, for good or bad, our brains tend to, if I didn't write stories, my brain would be creating all kinds of scenarios that would have me like curled up in a ball under a couch somewhere.
Like, just, yeah. Well, the great news about becoming a writer is that when the voices talk to you, no one will lock you up.
Exactly.
You just say, "No, leave me alone, I'm writing."
Yep.
And you can do what the voices tell you to do within reason.
Within reason.
Yeah.
In your written
In your
world.
written world.
You know, and I very much believe that we're all on an adventure. We're all on the hero's journey, whether we acknowledge it or not. And the fun begins, and the real adventure begins when we acknowledge it. And I really got inspired when I met my husband years ago. I'm not going to say how long ago. He had just finished hiking the Appalachian Trail, and I was just
Wow.
I was just enthralled. I was like,
That's
wow, 6 months. Well, back in the day, people took about 6 months. Now I think there's a race, and everybody's trying to do it
I
like
read
as fast as
online,
they can.
Which is crazy, by the way. Take your time.
Yeah.
You're walking the Appalachian Trail, which is awesome.
2,000 miles.
Yeah, and you should enjoy the hell out of
Yes.
that. because-
So we got to dating, and I said, I can't marry you until I've hiked the trail. And so I actually did marry him
That's
first.
where the race came from. He was like, "All right, we're on it now."
I actually did marry him first, and then a few months later, we started the Appalachian Trail together. So
That's
I hiked
awesome.
it with him. So he's the crazy man who hiked it twice. I say for me, but you know.
It'll work.
It'll work.
Yeah, you take the wins where you can get them. We're guys. We're simple creatures. Take the win.
I believe that. I believe that.
So, all right. So we have Enlightened, the newest iteration of Enlightened, and you kind of like the magic stories. You like
I
the stories
love it.
about the magic all around us.
And always have. I fell in love with vampires back in the day, before they were popular.
There was a time, by the way, the vampire wasn't cool.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
But he was always kind of cool. He just, society didn't see it that
yes,
way.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, Bram Stoker's Dracula has been a book I've loved for a long time, and I think that's the first time I really saw the symbology of them and what they represented on so many layers, and I could talk about that for days. But not just vampires. I love everything magical, exploring all the mythology across the world. I mean, Joseph Campbell is one of my heroes just for how he delved. He spent his life studying the
Yes.
magic and the stories and what they represent to us. And I really do believe
and
that.
why they speak to us
Yes.
so much. Yeah.
And if you go in, and I don't know what genres you read or if you read.
A lot, but
Yeah.
and most. Honestly, the only thing that I don't read a lot of or haven't read a lot, I don't read a lot anymore because I can't see very well.
Yeah.
So, which is torment.
Yes.
It is when you look at a book and you're like, hey, I want to. Yeah. But the only thing I never really got hooked was just pure romance adventure. I could never get, and that, it's not because it's not great, because it is. And so many of our contemporaries are writing so many amazing romance stories. It's just that it is the method for getting there is oversimplified for me.
Okay.
I'm always looking for. I'm always doing that Joseph Campbell thing. I'm always trying to dive in and find that hidden thing.
Right. Where's this adventure? Where's that twisting point?
Human romance, and it is a mystery to me.
I think it is to all of us.
But as mysterious as it is, there is a playbook for it for entertainment purposes, and I can't dive in as much and study. So
that makes sense, because most romance novels are geared towards a female, let me say that word, audience between the ages of, say, 20 and 65. It's like pretty broad, but it's female.
In fairness, I'm a guy. Y'all know that already. And I mean no offense to the rest of my gender, but we're just not that bright. And the mysteries of romance,
so hard on
they
yourself.
do elude us. If they didn't elude us, romance authors would have no audience, because the reason that I think so many women gravitate toward that is because we're just not that good at it.
Well, it's fantasy in a lot of ways. Like,
yes.
idyllically, this is how a romance...
Idyllically, he'd understand.
Yes.
He doesn't. We don't. I'm honest. But that's okay.
Yeah.
Because it is a kind of magic in and of itself. But everything else I love to read, and Joseph Campbell is an idol of mine as well.
Yeah.
I love the concept of a hero's journey. I love watching, because I always say that what makes literature important isn't that it tells life stories, because you could tell a real life story, you could tell a fictional tale, but in order to get to the truth of the human condition, you have to study the moments in transition. When we are transforming, we are going from what we were to what we could be or would be. And the magic is in those moments, because there's something mysterious about how we get from point A to point B. Something happens to our brains along the way. Joseph Campbell studied that a lot, what it takes, what the steps of that transformation are.
And transformation requires unraveling, disintegrating, and coming back together. And that's terrifying and fascinating to us.
Absolutely.
And which is where the supernatural creatures come in, because let's look at a vampire who disintegrates in the sun. What does that symbolize? What does that mean? What is life? What is death? What is, is there something in between?
The symbols are fascinating to follow, because they can represent anything from cultural phenomenon to deep personal dynamics. And Bram Stoker's Dracula is a really great example of that, because he attacked British imperialism while telling the story of the quintessential outsider in society, all from a Catholic Irishman's background in the middle of London.
Yeah.
And it was so disguised that 100 years later, we're still talking about him.
Exactly.
And none of his contemporaries caught him.
Yeah, did you get caught doing it? And that's why I write fantasy, urban fantasy, in modern times, because it gives people permission to explore ideas that they wouldn't allow
They're
themselves.
uncomfortable exploring if you gave them a real world scenario.
Exactly.
If you make that a cultural minority, or if you make that person or set of characters relevant to today's news, everybody goes, ooh, and they get scared and they close up and they clench up. But if it's a monster, if it's magic, if it's okay to hate them for a minute and then find out about them, all of a sudden you just enlightened someone.
And it's interesting, because you just touched on a very key theme of enlightened is the monster. The monster outside of us, the monster inside of us. Who is the real monster? And that's part of what that story is all about, a major theme.
Enlightened, guys, check it out. I hate that card, but see, as soon as you get having a really good conversation, she's got to get all like, here you go. And so we've been hanging out with Melissa Lummis. We were talking a little bit about enlightened and writing, and There's a lot of stuff we packed
Yeah.
into like 12 minutes.
Yes, we
See?
did.
So rewind it, watch it again, because there's a lot of stuff going on here. In the meantime, we're going to thank our friends and our partners at Famous Faces and Funny, Space Coast Comics, Indie Originals, Josh Bauer at J Bauer Art for all this fantastic artwork that's on our set.
It's
We love it.
awesome.
He does a great job.
The Joker.
Yes, that is
one of my favorite
That is
characters.
actually our own cosplay Michael as the Joker,
Oh.
painted by Josh Bauer.
Nice.
It's like a whole meta thing on
Can
the
they
set.
see it past my head?
Yes, I
I'll
think
check.
so. I'm not sure. We want to thank Hearts Helping Others of Central Florida. Thank you to Bea and her whole team for all they do to help families throughout Central Florida, and our great friends at the Foxwood Wine Company, Cliff and Rebecca, for these really comfy chairs.
Yeah, these
Makes
are great.
life really good. So, guys, stay tuned in and stay logged on. Hit subscribe. Come back. We've been hanging out with Melissa Lummis, the author of Enlightened. Links are down below so you can check out her books and all the stuff that she's doing. There was so much we didn't get to talk about because Sage is mean. That's our reasoning here. And so remember, guys, come back over and over again to see who we're hanging with next. Awesome. Thank you so much,
Awesome.
Melissa.
That was